Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another podcast, Inside Polling. Great to have you. Yesterday was an awesome show. We put ourselves in both camps, what that must feel like, strategy that they're both going through, looking at different states. I'm sure you saw the thumbnail on the YouTube headline. It's all about Pennsylvania. I really believe it is. 4 years ago on this Saturday, when this is like peak excitement. If you're in the campaign, we were loaded with polls. Do you know how many polls I have today? One. How is it possible that 72 hours before the campaign, we have one poll? It's a Rasmussen poll that had in Michigan, which is important. So you have a right leaning poll, considered right leaning, in Michigan, showing before it was a tie, now showing Harris +1. And that goes back to what I've been seeing, what I've been talking about. The Rust Belt there, we have the three states, the blue wall, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. I'm starting to think more and more that Michigan and Wisconsin, and I've been saying how difficult Wisconsin would be for Trump. I think it's going to go Harris's way. Now, I also believe, and we'll go through the states, that the other states are going to go Trump's way. We're going to leave out Nevada for now, but the North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona are going to go back to Trump. Now, before we go to the map, I want to just go through a little bit about how everyone's feeling because the emotions can be high. I've been on the inside, I've been on the outside, and sometimes being on the outside is harder because you're just you're so emotional, you can only vote. But when you're on the inside, you can hustle, you can stay up 24/7, you can just put as many hours as you possibly can. I mean, I lost 12 pounds in the last election that I was involved with on the campaign. You leave it all out. I remember election night when the numbers came in, I went up to the hotel room and crashed. And then I was sick for days because you were never going to get sick while you're in that moment of the adrenaline rush. But when it was over, I just crashed. I do want to just start with a note because locally, when I was you know how you meet people and in your career and their statements, some of them stick with you. There was a statement someone made once. I'm not going to mention who it is. And I passed it on to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. I was probably in my mid 20s. I'm certainly not that anymore. Um, and I said, "How are you dealing with this decisiveness, the divisiveness of this election we're in?" Right, this is years and years ago. And of course, back then, the same. It just feels just like today. Every election is just like now. And made an incredible statement to me. It was, "Hey," because I s I saw this person talking to other people from the other side of other party, and they were being so friendly with the election coming up. And I said, "How are you dealing with this?" He said, No, 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 you don't understand. I'm just not friends with these people for 364 days, but just on one day, I'm not gonna like them." And it stuck with me. It stuck with me because I always told that to people. When you're on the inside, you start to get it. All the inside people, Democrat, Republican, all get along. They're buddies, right? They're hanging out. They're all having dinner. They're all playing golf. And just during 2 months, we're at each other's throats, and then that's it. It stuck with me so much that in the in social media today, I was passed this note by my wife. It reads like this: "I thought it's best to post this regardless of Tuesday's outcome. If you're one of my current friends and you are voting for Trump, please, please unfriend me. I would think there were only a few, but to those few, and for civility's sake, please stop faking it, excuse me. Sadly, we cannot be friends. Let's keep the parting simple and civil. We do not have enough in common to be friends." I believe in our beautiful, unique, and messy form of American democracy and our regulated capitalist economy. Your candidate does not. Do you know who made that statement? The same person that gave me that advice, whatever, 25 years ago. I was absolutely shocked. And I'm not sure if, you're getting older, person gets older and you start to get, angrier or whatever it may be. But what's so fascinating was the response from people. The amount of love and that people were showing, not to this person, but talking about how we love both sides. The policeman, that your neighbor, we're all so different. We all believe, but we're all friends. I mean, just to read a few of these are unbelievable. The comments, just because we're on opposite sides, we're never gonna let you're one of my best friends. We're not gonna let politics ruin our relationship. We can still play in the same box. Let's all be mature about this. On Wednesday, I hope you feel different. Another person, I didn't vote for Donald Trump and never did before, but I think this is so shallow. We Americans are one big family and learn to tolerate each other's opinions. I have friends who are MAGA. I've never let that destroy an old friendship. I also have friends who are left of Bernie Sanders, and I love them too. This goes on and on and on. There's 150 messages back like that. It's just, remember, your candidate is going to lose. One of your candidates is going to lose. It's okay. It's okay. We'll be back here 4 years from now talking about somebody else. So, with that, let's get back into the real dirt, which is Pennsylvania. So, with Pennsylvania, I'm going to walk through. We're going to try not to be too analytical, and we're going to just chop it up into pieces. Now, I've made this just a really strong point. I'm having a hard time connecting 2020 during COVID, when everyone had a ballot, absentee ballot, versus now when everyone feels comfortable going to the polls. I can't come up with the perfect analysis of joining the two together because they're two different worlds, in my opinion. But let's do the best we can with what we have, okay? So, around 6.9 million people in Pennsylvania voted. Let's start with that. 2016, Trump won by 0.72. 2020, Biden won by 1.17. So he switched it over about 2 percentage points. The numbers were about 3.4.5 million for Biden and almost 4 million for Trump. I mean, I'm going to be rounding here, okay, guys? Now, remember, in Pennsylvania, it's mail-in ballot only for early. There's no like in-person voting, okay? It's mail-in ballot only, just to put that out there. In 2016, just to give you some history now, there was around 900,000 more Democrats than Republicans. 900,000. Now it's around 340,000 more Democrats. So the state has turned more Republican, or Trump has turned the state more Republican. And we're going to go after this after the election. We're going to talk about post-Trump world, what it looks like. Would have Pennsylvania gained all those ballots for Republicans if Trump wasn't on the ticket? If it was Nikki Haley, would she been able to gain what's that, 580,000 more votes, registered votes for Republicans? I'm not sure. So let's go to the next step. Exit polls in 2020, because they don't really give us the statistics on gender, on who voted and how many. But let's just go to the exit polls. Said around 53% of women voted in 2020. Around 47% were men. That makes sense. We talked about it, what, a day or two ago. Women vote more than men, and it will continue that way. Okay. Now, let's get to 2020's early mail in ballots. Now, of course, I don't agree with this, but COVID was there. Everyone had a ballot. 50% of the people felt uncomfortable about going in person. So I felt that there's going to be a much more increase in 2020 on early voting. But let's stick with the statistics and I'll go with it. In 2020, around 2 million ballots were requested by Democrats. I'm going to keep independents and others out of this whole conversation today. Okay. So we're just going to go through Democrats and Republicans. Around 2 million were requested, returned, meaning they were sent in early, 1.7 million votes. The return rate on that's around 88%. So basically, hey, I request a ballot. 88% of the time, Democrats returned it. Republicans requested 784,000. That's versus almost 2 million of Democrats. 784,000 were requested, 623,000 were returned. That's a return rate of about 79%. 79% of the ballots were returned on the Republican Party voters. There was around 2.6 million early voters in 20. Okay? So, now, let's move to 2020 now. Now that we have that, right? We have our ratios, we have the returns and how big it was. Actual day voting. Well, let's stick with the actual absentee voting. 76% went to Biden. Early voting absentee in 2020. 76 went to Biden, around 23% went to Trump. Okay? Actual day of voting went the other way. 65% for Trump, 34% for Biden. Okay? So that's super important to talk about. Now, we move to 2024 real numbers. Okay? Real numbers. We're going to go to requested by Democrats 1.2 million. Let me grab the real number here versus 2 million in 20. This is why I'm having a hard time, going back and forth on this, right? I've been asked why you're not doing Pennsylvania because of this exact reason. But let's stick with it. 1.2 million were requested, returned so far 939,000. That leaves a 78% return rate for Democrats. And it was 88% before? 78% have returned it this year for Democrats, 88% last time. And of course, less ballots requested. Almost 800,000 less requested. So there's good news on both sides here and a little bit of bad news on both sides. Republicans requested 703,000. They requested the exact amount, basically, right? A little less. It was 784,000 before, so 80,000 less. So the Republicans moved up. If you look at COVID or around the same, where Democrats dropped by 800,000, Republicans were only dropped 70,000. So they returned 546,000, which leaves their return rate around 78%. Okay, so we got a good idea. Democrats a lot less ballots asked for now because I'm assuming, right, everybody would that they're going to be going to the polls now. So you have less ballots guaranteed to start with. for the Dems probably has you a little worried. And Republicans have stayed about the same, a little bit less, but have returned the same, but around 78% have been returned. So let's keep going. Okay. So now we have to take out the independents, right? There's got to be, there's 1.8 million independents in Pennsylvania. So we're left with like 7 million more voters, you would think, Democrat or Republican voters only, about 7 million left. And the Delta right now, if you want to think about it this way, in 24, is around, it's around almost 400, it's 400,000. So the Democrats party ballots have about a 400,000 lead. 400,000 lead. We're not counting independents. We don't know how Republicans voted. We don't know how Democrats voted. We don't know anything, but we do know that the Democrat ballots, 400,000 or more, have been counted or have been handed in. How many more votes do we have to go? There's about, I'm guessing, around 4 million more people, Democrats or Republicans. I'm throwing out independents for now because I didn't even include them. Around 4 million are left. If the theory I just read you that before it was 65-34 for Trump last time. But I think it's pretty well known that Democrats were a little more nervous about going out than Republicans, right? To vote in person. So what do you want to say here? This is where the formula gets interesting. We've got a 400,000 person lead by Democrats, we're assuming, and we've got about a 4 million more votes to go. Do you want to use 60-40 to Trump? If you think it's 60-40 to Trump, you can use 50-50. The Dems win. You can use 55-45. It gets interesting. Let's just use 60-40, which is 5% less than 2020. And it could be tighter than that. If you use 60% for Trump day of, let's say the men come out and vote, right, which we know vote more Republican. We're assuming 60% is around 2.4 million more Republican votes. Democrats at 40% for Biden is around 1.6 million. That's an 800,000 difference. If it was only up to Republicans and Democrats and we use 60%, the Republicans win this race. Now, we don't know what that's going to be. And how do you know how the independents are going to vote? So I wanted to break this down to you. It's really difficult to use it, but we always knew in the old days, Trump would be able, with the day of voting was ginormous. And you see it. 65% rate he won day of. That can't happen if you're Democrats across the board. And it shouldn't happen because the early voting is way up around the country. And Republicans are using their votes early. There's not much left in the tank day of. We're not going to get this ginormous amount of day of voting anymore. When you're looking at 70 million people have already voted. There's not many left. So the rush on day of is not going to be like it used to be. Now, Pennsylvania is known as a day of voting place. Obviously, you could see it. Who can get out the vote? I've given you the ratios. You can play with the numbers. There's about 4 million left. This could go either way. That's how tight this race is. Okay? So I wanted to break all that down for you. Hopefully you got a better understanding of where we are. Pennsylvania has stopped their ballots. You can still bring your ballots to. You can still mail them in up to a certain date, but you have to get it in, and you can bring it to election day, your ballot. So if you're in that state, you haven't returned your ballot, bring it day of, or you can just go ahead and vote too, I'm sure. So with that, I want to just go over the states real quick for you. As we move to tomorrow, Sunday, what do we have? Trump sitting at about a 0.3 lead nationally, so basically an even race. I still believe Harris will win by about a point and a half or a point. And I think in today's world, I think it's different than 20 and 16, whereas numbers need to be higher, where the Democrats' number need to be higher, because I think Trump will eat away nationally some of Harris's national vote. So I think that's going to be tighter. The race, I think, is Pennsylvania. Let's go through the states. We got Trump leading just slightly by national, basically a tie. Pennsylvania has Trump 0.4. We just talked about it. Basically a tie. North Carolina 1.5. Georgia 2.6. These are all Trumps. Arizona 2.3. Nevada, Trump 1.5. Wisconsin and Michigan are both now in Harris's side with the polls 0.2 for Wisconsin, 0.7 for Michigan. That's where we are. Okay. Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania. Everybody get out and vote. I'm sure there's a lot of early voting going on today. And I'm sure there'll be a rush Sunday and Monday in some of your states. And listen, Tuesday, it's all on. It's all on. I'll be back with you tomorrow. We'll dissect some of as the early voting is now stopped in, I think it's Georgia, North Carolina, I think Nevada. Some other states now are dropping out their early voting or mail-in voting because you can't get it in the mail in time and things like that. You know, the dramas that's going to create. So, guys, I love you. It's been great. Hopefully you're caught up a little bit on Pennsylvania. And listen, keep watching, and you guys take care of yourself. And remember, let's prepare for a loss. Whoever you are, let's prepare for a little bit of a loss, okay? And if you win, good for you guys on Tuesday. All right, guys, I love you. We'll talk to you soon. You take care.